Okay, evening everybody. Can I just check? Can you all hear me? I've got a bit of an issue with my microphone. It's just stopped taking an input 5 minutes beforehand. So I've had to come up with a Jerry fix of just doing it on my headset mic. Hopefully you can hear me because someone let me know one way or the other. If you can hear me, you can hear. Is it loud? Is it quiet? I don't know. They always say you should start the first few seconds of a stream off with something spectacular. This is not how I envisaged it. But I will just speak loudly and maybe you can all tell me to shut up. Yeah, probably back of the room. I tell you what, I hadn't even thought of this. I'm going to hang this here on my mic and then maybe it might seem a bit different. I mean, I could just wear the headset, I suppose. But unfortunately, it's either that or just going off the camera mic. So it's a little bit different. Apologies for that. But thank you for persevering. Thank you for letting me have yesterday off and just turning up tonight instead. Appreciate that. And actually, you know what? I think it's kind of worked in our favour because it gives us a little bit more to talk about. But I've sort of I think we need to prepare ourselves for a move. I think Bitcoin is ready to make a move. Which way that move is going to go for me, in the short to medium term, it's probably in the medium term. I still think we're part of this, 4 year cycle in the bear market, and so that move down is there. But it could well actually be a move upwards first, and maybe we can capitalize on that in terms of making a little bit of a extra bang for our buck. Maybe look at some exit positions before the market starts to roll over and go from there. The other thing we obviously have to talk about is BitTensor. It has been flying over the last few weeks, well over 100% since its bottom in pretty much the beginning of February. So what's that? 8 weeks, we have gone from 140 to around about 380 today at its peak. So an almost a 3x on that. So of course we're going to talk about that. We've got a few questions from you guys about BitTensor, so we will go through that. But generally, we're just have a look at where the market is because we don't have, well, we're not going to have a call on Friday to just go through the chart. So we'll try and do a bit more of a focus on that today, just because I'm not around on Friday. So without any further ado, let's jump into where we find ourselves in the charts for a 3 day time frame for Bitcoin. And to be honest with you, nothing has changed. Okay, we are still battling that 72 level. Yes, we have breached above it. We immediately recovered that here. We're still working within that rising channel that we've been forming. A lot of people talk about that being a bear flag formation. We're kind of working towards that theory as well. And at the moment, we're just trying to wait and see whether or not we can, one, get above the 72 level. And if we can, maybe making that move towards 79, 80,000, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But along that we stay under this and we just continue to range out to the side, I think what we're going to find is actually, the cycle, the 4 year cycle, the next leg down is just going to take over. And we're going to have a look at making that move. And I would suggest from that, then the 62,000 level will fall. We'll kind of chart all that out a little bit later on. That's not what I wanted. That is there. Nothing has changed in terms of Bitcoin dominance. I keep on saying I'll change it and I always forget to. Total 2 is looking exactly like Bitcoin is, very much following in the market, which is what is represented in terms of Bitcoin dominance. And so there's no real change there. But the one that, to be fair, is not changing because it has been climbing for the last few weeks is BitTensor. And we have continued to make that very strong move, out of that 200 level. We kind of ran up to sort of the 290 level, kind of having that battle with the Gandalf line. And as someone posted yesterday, we broke through the Gandalf level finally. And actually, that pent up aggression has given us a huge move over the last sort of 48 hours from around about 265 all the way up to, as I say, just under 380. So an incredible move there. Obviously, we want to know where's this leading to and what potentially could come from that one. But of all of the altcoins bar 2, BitTensor has been doing the best over the last 90 days, which is not something we talk about that often. Bitcoin has outperformed, not Bitcoin, BitTensor has outperformed the market previously. It normally comes with a consequence afterwards, which we'll talk about later, but it is there. And what I found quite interesting was, we've drawn these yellow lines for so long. We started re-engaging talking about this lower line, because obviously we were battling it. And then actually, in such quick succession, we were already back at this top tram line and just wondering whether or not this is going to form some sort of potentially um, temporary resistance. But it's interesting it's coming there. And the other thing that we stopped talking about, because we've just been tracking it for so long, was these lines. So basically, these channels have just been, all they are just clones of it and then just pulling it down. And this one here is interesting. I mean, I don't need to pull it down. That was just the example. But if we extend, how's this going to work? I'm going to try and just drag it along. If we try and tie those bottoms and those tops, kind of running into this level at the moment. Now, I don't think it's enough to say, right, that's it, that's a definite turnaround point. Interesting that we are starting to find some sort of resistance around that. But I will just leave it where it previously lived. I don't think it's anything to talk about at the moment. But just to sort of note that maybe we're starting to run into some sort of resistance. Maybe it's a similar impact to what we've had here. A lot of the indications are going to say we're a bit overbought. Maybe we do need time to catch a little breather before we take that next leg up. But BitTensor has been fantastically outperforming the rest of the market. I'm trying to find Tau BTC. Here it is. Tau BTC, a great reflection in terms of how BitTensor has been doing, not just against the rest of the market, but also Bitcoin itself. And we've effectively doubled its value against Bitcoin since the bottom was formed around about early Feb. So hats off to BitTensor. We will dive into that. As I said, we've had a couple of questions about it. In terms of just, I suppose, I've tried to avoid, really trying to delve into what's been going on in the Middle East because, as most of us are aware, Trump will say one thing, the opposition, whoever he's talking about, will either deny it or say the other, and the market just seemed to move. And people have posted in Discord about sort of the oil plays and how these shorts were taken 5 minutes before some sort of announcement of a ceasefire and all this kind of stuff. So there's definitely some shady shenanigans that are going on there, which just amplifies something we've talked about for, it's not even weeks, months, that the market at the moment is still driven by the fundamentals. And unfortunately, despite him calling wolf or the sky is falling however many times, Chicken Little, is it Chicken Little? I can't remember who. People still fall for it and people still react to that. And so there's a sense at the moment that anything can happen. Any technical sort of setup that we're looking at from a macro point of view could be completely undermined by obviously the significant developments that are going on in the Middle East. And I think we kind of have to take that into account with any move that we're willing to take, and just have to remember that we probably need to stay a little bit more nimble right now than perhaps we may have wanted to have sort of, 4 or 5 weeks ago. But this article here, Bitcoin has retaken 71,000. Actually, it's just slightly lost it. And this was off the basis that was announced yesterday that the United States had effectively been negotiating with Iran over a potential ceasefire. Iran immediately said there's been no discussions whatsoever. And in classic fashion, just missiles continued to fly. And they're still sort of banging this drum, the United States, that there is some sort of ceasefire going on there, whilst at the same time deploying 7,000 Marines to the area with a view of, potentially, Krag Island, where the oil refinery is, sort of, landing on the beaches there and taking that island. The repercussions of that could be quite severe. But Trump sort of gave his self-imposed sort of 5 days for Iran to give in to these 15 points. And if they did that, then obviously that would create the 30-day ceasefire. The skeptic in me is sort of suggesting that, wait a second, those 5 days, we'll take it nicely to Friday for some weekend action and the shenanigans that goes along with that. Now, we'll go through this in a minute. I was watching a video from Tino today, and it took me ages to find this because everyone talks about these 15 points. I couldn't find it on any news article whatsoever. And I'm not going to read through them all, but suffice to say that when you do read through these, and I'll post it in Discord if you're actually interested, and these are speculative, but it is assumed that these are what the 15 was, 14 of the 15 points are. There is pretty much no way that Iran are going to, agree to it. Basically to completely denuclearize themselves is what they're looking to do. They've got to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which I suppose is fine. They've got to get rid of all of their missiles. Missiles will only be allowed for self-defense going forward. They're not allowed to help any of the other countries around them or any sort of funding of any, state terror or anything like that. And then the 15th one, which isn't on here, but is an assumption that Iran would then have to pay whatever it's cost the United States to get to this point in the conflict. So if those are true, you can kind of see why Iran are probably pushing back on that. And it just kind of seems like this is actually just a little bit of, misdirection, if you will, just while Trump and his allies, or ally, I suppose, in Israel, get their shit together before some sort of ground invasion takes place. We get a ground invasion, I think this is going to turn into a very, not that it isn't already, a messy situation. And I do believe that the markets will not react very positively to that on a whole. So I think we've got to be very cautious in terms of how we look at the charts, which we're going to go into in a moment. And as I said, just bear in mind that we actually may need to be more nimble as these develop. This is not just, some bickering between sort of, the Conservatives and Labour or whatever in the UK economy that the globe doesn't really care about. This is, a conflict in a major area affecting a lot of nations at the moment, with the biggest superpower in the world pretty much looking quite embarrassed at the moment because it's not gone the way that they thought. So, and we've got a temperamental leader in that. So I think we've just got to be very careful with it. Now, as I said, when the announcement was made, Bitcoin and the rest of the market had a fairly decent jump from that. I want to take a look a little bit later on at the likes of the Nasdaq because we were getting some warning signs that actually this could be the sign of things collapsing through. But then we suddenly open to the news of a potential ceasefire, and it looks like a tepid recovery from that one. But as I say, if that ceasefire falls through, does the hope of that recovery fall with it? And any gains that maybe have been made, we could look to come crashing back down. In terms of the institutions, sorry, let's give it that. Interestingly, they're not so convinced themselves. I mean, you just look at BlackRock, a few red sales, not massive red sales, one black day over the last week, but generally just kind of not really doing too much. And I think the sentiment again is from an institutional point of view, we are unsure with what we should be doing in the market right now. We don't really believe what Trump is saying. Let's just wait to see how things play out and go from there. So I wouldn't say we're in, canary in a coal mine, oh God, it's died kind of territory, but we're certainly sniffing at the moment just to try and understand if there is some sort of gas leak. I don't know why I do all these analogies, but anyway, that's what they are. And in terms of the fear and greed, we're still in extreme fear. We've managed to hold on to that 70,000 level for a few days now, but we can't seem to get out of it. And I think crypto has its own fear because I think it's a fairly widely respected position that we are in that bear market right now. So of course there's going to be fear with it, but put on top of that, threats of recession, put on top of that, the developments in the Middle East, and I think it's just generally a fearful market. And I've got this over here, but we might as well talk about it now. And then you have a look at the olive branch that everybody was talking about for God knows how long, of rate cuts are going to come down, we're going to see some massive drops in those, floodgates are going to go open, money's going to be printed, and Valhalla, here we come. Well, actually, the next Fed, now it's not exactly saying this is going to happen, but previously we used to look at it from a point of view of the big blue bar at the moment is 350 to 375. That's the current rate target. And we were kind of looking at rates dropping. Now there's no interest in rates dropping. Actually, we're seeing 4% chance of rates going up because of what's going on. Inflation is probably going to start to spiral up again, and the Fed are going to have to step in and try and manage that as quickly as possible. And so suddenly that conversation about rates coming down, money going to get printed soon, it's probably going to go a bit on the back burner as we try and deal with this. And I think that's just something to watch. We've got over 30 odd days until this comes into play. But just from that narrative point of view alone, actually we're starting to flip that round. So ramifications are already starting to be seen, even though we're only about 4 weeks into this conflict there. Getting on to Bitcoin's price itself. And this is where we currently find ourselves. And again, trapped kind of in a bit of no man's land on the 12-hour time frame at the moment. We have, represented by the yellow boxes, liquidity zones both above and below us right now. And we haven't really been able to dip into that 72,000 to 74,000 level, which has been there for pretty much the past week at the moment. But ultimately, there's been no real interest of buyers stepping into that zone to fill that. I think, well, does it mean that it can't happen? Absolutely. We're so close to it at the moment. It wouldn't take much for us to move it up there. And someone's asked me to look into a video, which I will talk about a little bit later on. But one of the things in that video was the fact that actually at the end of this week there is an options expiry, and the max pain level of that options expiry is actually around about 75,000. And so do not be surprised if the market does actually move up during this week to take out that $75,000 level. Now, it wouldn't actually clear the 76 and a bit thousand that we made last week, so not exactly continuing the highs, but it could be the start of that journey moving on towards that sort of $78,000, $79,000 level, tying in, well, on this one, what is this one actually? I think it's the 50 EMA on the 12 hour, but when we look on the weekly, that's going to tie in with the 20 EMA kind of level. We'll get to that in a moment. In terms of everything else, yeah, okay, we're sandwiched between two fib levels. We're balancing on that'll be the 10 and the 20 EMA, and because we've ranged now for the last 7 or 8 weeks, those two are basically just intertwined right now. No surprise where that is. And as I said, I don't think there's too much this chart really gives us, except for some potential targets of where price may go once it's finally decided which way it is going to turn. And I know everyone's wanting me to get on and talk about BitTensor, and I will. However, for me, my primary focus has always really been Bitcoin. And we look at it on the weekly time frame, and for me, nothing has changed. Nothing has broken in terms of what we kind of advise may happen. Over the last few weeks, we're still stuck within this range. We're still in a downtrend. We're still making some sort of bear flag type movement, and I haven't even thrown on any fibs level, any EMAs from the weekly time frame yet. But when we add those in, again, nothing's really screaming to us that there's any major move up. Now, yes, we could make a move up to 80,000, which is the 20 EMA that I was talking about. And that might feel great in terms of where we actually are. But in terms of actually breaking the narrative of the downwards bear market the bear market narrative, should I say, and the downward trajectory, not even a retest of the 20 EMA would do that. Not even a retest actually of the 50 EMA would do that. And so whilst they are, sizable moves from where Bitcoin is at the moment, it isn't really eradicating the general move back down. And I think despite what we're seeing in some of the other assets that we may be involved in, I think we've always got to bear that in mind. And if you are of that mindset, whatever you're seeing on the shorter time frame, you just need to act in that accordingly. And I mention that because of what someone's put in some of the questions a little bit later on, which we'll sort of come back onto. And I just want to remind you of where we currently find ourselves. So what have we kind of said? Let's get rid of the EMAs. We don't need them. We had this move down from here, and then we've talked about these sort of bear market years where, we find a local bottom in and around about February, then we move up through February and March, and then what do? We see that correction and that continuation to the downside in April. And for what I mean by that is obviously this here is a bear market year, and that's what we're currently experiencing at the moment. So we found that low sort of in February, we've worked our way up through March. We're only a week away, less than a week away till April. And so, yes, we have had that sort of steady build up from 60,000 to 76,000. But, if other years have anything to go by, we're probably going to start to run out of steam soon and look to make that next leg back down. We go to the last time this occurred, 2022. Zoom in a little bit so we can see it a bit better. Pen ready. So here is the low. That is a weekly candle, and the last day of that week was the 1st of February. We found that low. We moved up through February and March. We found a high, and then in April we rolled over. We go to 2018. If I can find it on this chart, that's 2019. Here we go. We had the top. We've come back down. February we find that low. We move up. Actually, we only get into March, and then March we fall away instead. So the pattern has played out twice before. It actually did play out in 2014 as well, if we can find it. This is it here. So we've got sort of February kind of low, moving up, coming back down through April. Similar pattern. Sorry, I should have marked that up a little bit better. Apologies. Like that. Um, and so, yeah, we've kind of seen that. And we talked about maybe in March even being a month where we might see some sort of recovery. And that's it. But the recovery has not been that impressive. We might have been able to squeeze a 10% here, 15% there, but those have generally then been recovered to the downside, and we have just ranged through it. And I think we've always got to bear that in mind. I can't do that. I have to do it this way. When we're trying to pick where we are, and I don't take any real pleasure in having that bearish stance, but it just is how I feel right now, and it's where I best find that to be. And so, from my point of view, I've not really looked to reaccumulate any spot, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. I have tried to take advantage from a perp side. I have won some, I have lost some, and we'll talk about pipping a little bit later on as well. But for me right now, I still see further downside. My exits were generally higher than what current price is at the moment, and so I don't feel that there's any need or urgency to actually change my plan, because actually my theory on where I think this is going is still in play. And until that breaks, I will continue to do that. Just getting on to a couple of the questions. I'll just take this first one first, which is what I alluded to. And it's thoughts on the video. This video was by No BS Crypto. And those of you who have watched me a lot, I still follow him. I still watch some of his videos, but particularly when I was investing in altcoins, I thought this guy had a really, sort of clear understanding of altcoin research. And I'll be honest, I really rated them. So I've not watched too many recently, just because I've not been that involved in altcoins. And you've asked, what is the Gaussian channel? Which I've watched the video. He does talk about the Gaussian channel. I'm not sure if he wanted me to talk about anything else from that video. So I did write some summary somewhere. Where is it? Oh, it's closed. Bear with me a second. Okay, sorry. Let's have a look. Right, Gaussian channels. We'll cover that first, and then we'll go into this video, because that's the first thing that he talks about within the video. Now, I'll be honest, it's not something that I deal with. It's not something you see me talk about that often. It's not something that appears on my charts. But for those who haven't bothered to watch the video, and you don't necessarily need to, effectively, the whole, and it's not clickbait. The whole purpose of his title is nobody's watching. A major indicator has fired, which basically saying that we're going to see further downside. And what he's getting on about is the Gaussian channel. Now, what is a Gaussian channel? It's a pretty good question to ask, I suppose. And it is a smoothed out average trend line. So you can kind of see there is a slight delay to it. But you can kind of see as we look through here, it's taking the average of the price. It's just smoothing that out. So it's not as sort of stepped and as jerked up. And it just gives a channel either side of it. Very much like a Bollinger Band, I suppose. And just giving a representation of the market moving up and then moving back down. And as I said, there is a bit of a lag to it, and you can quite clearly see that, not just necessarily from the colors, but if you actually have a look at the 2020, 2021 bull market, the Gaussian channel, yes, it showed that we were moving up through those 2 years, but it doesn't actually turn and red until well into the bear market, certainly well into after the top had been called. And what No BS Crypto is effectively getting at is that we now have this change of the guard in terms of the Gaussian channel. It's gone from green to red, with price action being below that. It's only ever happened in 3 occasions on the weekly time frame prior to it. All 3 of those have fired in the bear market, but have been effectively the starter's gun to the next, if not final, leg down. And so what he was indicating is, you can see it here in his video, he has like these little red dots. I don't know where he gets those from, because I couldn't find it on any of the indicators, but there's a little red dot that kind of appears here. I'll zoom in. And he's like, right, see, the red dot appears here, which is where the line was, and then we had that move down, that final move down. We go to 2018, and the red dot appeared, guess where? Just there. And then we had that final move back down, and then similarly, the red dot appears here. And what we had that final move back down. And so what he's trying to get at is that we still have a further move down, but we may be actually looking at our last leg down. Now, he's not to say that, oh, it's going to be a quick V-shaped reversal. He actually goes on to say that we typically then spend sort of 2 to 3 months finding that bottom in which you can just sort of dollar cost average in. But, if not trying to catch a falling knife, after that move down, it's a pretty good time to start trying to fill your positions back up. And again, we spent a couple of months down here in a similar situation. And again, we had a couple of months down here. And his argument is markets would have probably looked to find that recovery early, except for the fact that FTX then collapsed and crapped the bed. And that was that final leg down from sort of 21,000 to 15,000, which actually at the time felt like the end of the world. But it's actually only a £6 move for the second largest exchange going under, which is quite, I think, quite restrained, really. So anyway, so he goes on to basically suggest that can't guarantee it's going to happen next week, can't guarantee it's going to happen the week after, but actually we should be preparing ourselves for another move back down. That move he kind of estimates to around about 50,000, which I think he's done based off a previous video, or at least that's what I could gather from the video. So I know it doesn't really necessarily help on what fundamentally makes a Gaussian channel, but I don't use it, so I don't know too much about it, to be perfectly honest with you, except for just that it is a smoothed out trend line, just showing from a high level perspective what the market is doing. As I mentioned, there is a bit of a delay on that one. You can change this in the settings and move things along to reduce the lag so it falls a little bit closer. See, that would have moved it to time with this drop here. That's not how he had it set up, so I've not tried to change it, and I'm not trying to look smart in saying that I knew about this beforehand. So anyway, that's where that sits. In terms of sort of the rest of the video, which I'm not sure if you asked me to talk about, but it seems you just said what were your thoughts on the video. Look, as mentioned, I like him. I think he has a very sort of level head on him. It's hard to judge someone. For you guys who maybe don't watch him, it's hard for me to just say, hey, trust this guy. You've never seen his video before, and I'm only going off of one video. What I would just say is he's still very altcoin allocated. He accepts that we're in a bear market. However, he believes that we are just about to get into that level of ideal buying. And I don't think that's too bad a mindset necessarily to have if you go on to the long term. And he kind of starts talking about the power law, which I know a lot of us know at least a decent amount about it, and gives that perspective that, look, by the time we get to 2030, the base of the power law is going to suggest that the lowest value that Bitcoin is going to get to is going to be in and around 150,000, which is a 2x from here. So in the next 4 years, even if you were to buy now, some of us have been in crypto a lot longer than 4 years, it's going to be worth more than that. So if you're interested for the long haul, then that's where you should be focused. I should have had a power law chart on because it does kind of suggest that where the price currently sits at the moment, although it isn't a guaranteed bottom, is generally considered to be an ideal time to start that accumulation side of things. So that's my view on it, Dan. I hope that helps. I don't know, but we'll go from there. Next question that I've been asked, I've grabbed a sip of tea, and it's gone cold. That's disgusting. Both of them are effectively tower related, and I'm going to start with the last one, and then I'll move on to Greg's. I think we're going to cover that. But someone is put, and I think it's a difficult thing to read, listen to, whatever. And whoever this is, look, I hope we can kind of sort of, at least try and get you back on the right side of a mentality picture. Maybe not the right side of price. I can't guarantee that. But they put, I'm stuck. Every move I make seems to be the wrong play.
Okay, I'm going to have to do this, which is now going to sound like I'm really at the back of the room, because I'm now speaking on the webcam microphone, which is about a meter away from me, bloody miles away. So I'll try my best. Apologies for losing the sound there. And it looks like I lost it a few minutes ago when I was reading about this here. So I'll give you a second opportunity to do it. I hope everyone can hear me now. I will speak loud. It's the best thing I can do. I'll get through this as quick as I can, and we'll get onto some charting. So basically, I think I've read this out, you probably heard it, but someone sort of said, look, I've missed my opportunity. I've sold BitTens for 240, watched it go down to 150. It's rallied since then. It's already at 390. I have no idea what to do. I've lost thousands of dollars by not being in. And whilst everyone's loving it, I secretly want the price to crash. And I get that. You know, that sentiment has been felt by every trader there ever has been. We all feel that. I have made so many, like, not mistakes, because I've done something with the right intention and the price decided to go somewhere else. If you stay in this industry long enough, that is exactly what is going to happen to you. The point is that ultimately, and I can only give it from my point of view, I could have done the same. I saw my BitTens at 290. I watched it go all the way down to 145. I could have bought twice as much BitTensor as what I had. I watched it do that. I talked about price at that level. Could quite easily have done that. But for me, I just don't want to hold alt spots at the moment. I've been quite vocal about that for the last few weeks and months, and that's just the position that I've sort of found myself in. And I've now watched the price go through where I sold it, but I haven't let that get me down for two reasons. One, my sentiment has not changed. I've talked about that for the last 30 minutes on this call. Still think in the medium term, Bitcoin's going to go down and it will drag altcoins with it. Yes, there will be an outlier or two that defies it. There's no guarantee that that outlier will be BitTensor. But I've also done something which maybe you, whoever you are, don't feel comfortable doing. I've tried a couple of trades with BitTensor to try and recover something. Is it anywhere near what I could have made by doubling my money? Of course it isn't. But for my risk reward, that's where I sit. And if you are feeling like a loser, as you call yourself, just remind yourself that I guarantee most people in LT will probably just be getting around that break-even levels. A lot of people bought in here. A lot of people have actually been sat in a loss for the last 2 months. And so they're not particularly celebrating the price because, thank God, they've got, X amount of profit from it. They're actually just back at that green kind of level. And all I would say is that, no plan is set in stone. So if you feel uncomfortable, then start to think about moving back in. If you're a long-term holder of BitTensor, then, just accept that you don't like that volatility. For whatever reason, if you don't believe that the bear market will continue and BitTensor is going to climb, don't be that stubborn person that holds into it. Find yourself an entry position and start dollar cost averaging back in. That is what I would suggest that you do. Now, to get on to Greg's point about what do I see BitTensor doing, I think we might as well just jump straight into the chart of BitTensor, and then we'll go from there. BitTensor has been on a rip. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we've moved up from pretty much $160. We got stuck in and around that $300 level with the Gandalf line, but yesterday we managed to break through that one. We've had a very good climb from that one, climbing all the way up to 380. But actually what we're starting to see right now is that, and we'll look at this on the smaller time frames, we're starting to see some sellers stepping in. Now, it doesn't mean that this move up has to be over by any stretch, but what it's saying is potentially suggesting is that actually after 125% move in the last 2 weeks, some profit taking is required and maybe corrections down to a more serious level rather than just a 10 EMA. And that could actually, for me, be the 800 EMA at $300. That seems to be the next major level of support to justify this move up. It's the Gandalf line, the line that has held price back for months. We finally got through it. What would we expect at Kobo? We would expect price to pull back to that level, kiss off it, and bugger off. And so that's the level I would be looking at. Price gets back down to there, recovering this beautiful vector candle on its way back down. But if it can hold that level of support, there's some serious strength there. If you're one of those people that are nervous about being out of the market, that could be your level to get back in. Now, in terms of whether or not this is sustainable, go back to what I said at the beginning of this. TA might be blown out the window from anything that Donald Trump tweets, does, whatever. So everything needs to remain nimble. We need to be on our toes, ready to make a decision with what that's going. Now, from a daily time frame, we've got a lot of clear area in front of us. And I mentioned in Discord earlier that actually got a bit clear space up to around about 450, the top of this vector candle. We suddenly start to then run into some noise in and around this previous peak from November. And if we're going to be realistic, what do we need to now make as a level for proving ourselves? $500 level, okay? So anywhere from 450 to 500, we have to break that $500 level. Going into the poll there, if we don't break that $500 level, this move is kind of nothing. It's a continuation of lower high, lower high, and that's just something that we've got to bear in mind. We have seen BitTensor make these strong moves. It's famous for them. And it can make these moves to significant levels. It's got to justify how it can continue with that move. That's where I'd be targeting. If we can hold 300 support, and it's clear space there. That is the magnet. The magnet for me is this vector, and that's the judgment level. What I'm looking at. I am concerned about how overbought it is. Okay, the RSI is at 80. I think it got to 82 at once. Zoom in for it. The highest it's ever been back in October 2023 when we went. But generally, the Binance all-time high, the previous all-time highs of sort of like 780, the time it got to 550, it's all been around about 82 on the RSI. This is overbought in any kind of asset class that you'd be looking at on the daily time frame. And so sellers are going to want to, buyers are probably going to want to take some profit. My honest opinion with it, it doesn't necessarily mean, as I said, that the one is over. We get on to the 4 hour time frame, you can actually kind of see the RSI does give a hell of a bearish divergence at the moment. The price is going up. The RSI is not doing as well. And again, I say this every time we talk about divergence. There's no guarantee on the time scale for that. But at some stage, we're going to see that correction. That is going to come back down through the neutral territory, likely heading all the way down towards that oversold. That's going to be replicated in the price. Now, it doesn't mean that the price has to completely eviscerate. But what we may see is it going back down, including some of these vector candles. Look, actually, that 300 level I was talking about, 4 hour time frame, is kind of lining up nicely with where the 50 EMA is. Now, okay, we touched it about a week ago, maybe some 4 days for it to be down, but an 11-day kind of period between that and 4 hour time frame makes perfect sense. But right now, it actually looks, except for the RSI being overbought, we're seeing price action moving up here. Consolidation periods back to the 50 EMA. Okay, a bit of a bump there, but consolidated back to the 50 EMA, and then it's moved back up. The move back to the 50 EMA for me, tying in with daily time frames from 300 to 200 EMA, sorry, the 800 EMA, and also just that Gandalf line making a lot of sense. And then we can kind of look at it from, it's going to get messy. I apologize if it gets messy, but if that's the top there, 380, that 50% move, which, 50% pullbacks, we kind of talk about that all the time. That actually takes us around about that 260 level. By the time we get there, I think these two will be on top of each other. That's 200 and the 800 EMA getting back to here. So, I know I talked about the 300 level. If we lose the 300, we're looking for that 250, 260 kind of level. It's pretty much the base of this shoulder resting period here anyway. Okay, that may feel like a full recovery from this first move, but it's only a 50% recovery from the move from the bottom. So I think that's the level that I would be looking towards. Do I personally think it will, continue and take us all the way to all-time highs? I don't. And that's not me bad-mouthing BitTensor because I'm not currently in it at the moment. That's just me reading the market. This isn't a new asset or a meme coin. This is an established one. So getting an all-time high in a bear market is an ask for any of those. If it's a brand new meme coin or something else, then no, it doesn't have the price history to be able to determine where its all-time high really lies. But for me, I don't actually see that being the case. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll be wrong big because I'm not in it at the moment, but obviously we start making some big moves. I will get back into it in where that sits. And so yes, that's kind of where I see BitTense. I don't think the hourly really tells us anything more. Obviously we are having that pullback here. Get rid of this. Do that. We're having that sort of pullback and that sort of topping pattern there, but look how many of these candles have just been going up at the moment. This pullback is for me nothing to fear. Even if it comes down $50 to that $300 level, that doesn't look so bad here. And again, I'm gonna just find some of these. But again, even this move here from the weekend, which we were at 260 to 380, that $50 level, so 310, 618, golden ratio, that 300 level, pull back into there, feels bad, but actually, that's a perfectly logical place for it to come back to. So, Greg, to answer to your question, do I think this is a real breakout or track? It is a real breakout. There's no doubt about it. It has broken out and it has done fantastically well. Look at this here. It is the fourth best performer for altcoins in the last 90 days, of 16.6% over the last 90 days. And as I mentioned, that a bit here, bit sensor. Come on that. There we go. 26 is number 26. 30% over 7 days. In the last 30 days, it's doubled its value. It's actually over the last 14 days, it's really done that. But doubled its value there. So very impressive to see where that has gone. Conscious that my mic is absolutely pants, so I will just move on to Bitcoin. So nothing has changed since Friday. We haven't got above the 50 EMA. This candle at the moment is kind of just a pretty clean rejection from that. But ultimately, in this entire move, we haven't cleared the 50 EMA cloud, which again is exactly very similar scenario to where we were last time. And we talked about on Friday, a rejection from the top of the cloud, backload 50 EMA, finding some support, and then maybe about one run up. Is that what we're doing? We topped the top of the cloud, we come back down, now resting on top of that 20 and 10 EMAs. Do we get that one run through there? It's this vector candle tying in on the week time frame 20 EMA. We talked about this already, and then we make that move back down. I still think that is absolutely on the cards, but right now I haven't done anything. I'm not long, I'm not sure, I haven't bought any more. I've still got that 20% Bitcoin that I haven't sold. But yeah, the risk reward is there for me. We start to build above 72. Maybe I take that chance of getting a move from 72 to 79, a 10% move to sort of try and help with whatever happens with me selling something before. But ultimately, unless we really start to build above 80, I really see myself getting into that situation. Now, I don't think there's anything more to discuss that I haven't discussed in the daily time frame. If you go down to the 4 hour, green. 300. Look at this from the 4 hour point of view. We've ranged for so long. Can you actually make that out? Probably not. But in this level here, we've got the 200, the 10, the 50, and the 20 within $300 of each other. That's how long we have ranged for. How many candles we've ranged for? We've managed to flatten out the EMAs where they are. So certainly something to think about there. Now, there is a vector candle up to the north, about 76. Maybe we take that journey towards 75, close that out, give that a max pain target. Some of these options that are still on the table will expire. But unless we seriously start to make a move through those 72 to get towards 75, the end of the week. I do think what we're going to see is news events going to take over for us. That deadline's going to end. We're going to have an official rejection of the ceasefire with potential retaliatory actions of boots on the ground. And what happens all the time? Traditional markets aren't open. It's just crypto and Bitcoin that are left to take the brunt of it. And if the markets decide they don't like that, then you know that we're going to be the first line of defense in terms of price action. So certainly something to consider there. But we're ranging, and it's difficult to really give ourselves any kind of move from that one. If you wanted to just sort of go away, like to try and give these calls on a Friday for just go away for the weekend, set some alerts. I suppose, I'd say 75,000, but you want an alert beforehand. So we get through this vector candle at around about 73,000. Maybe you can start to open up your charts and have a look. But ultimately, we lose 70,000, 69,000. I'd probably be wondering whether or not we're actually going to move back down to 65, 64,000. There is, I think on the day. Well, there's an angle. Might be on the hourly then. This candle, this one lines up with all of the others. But effectively, there is some sort of not as we do with the wicks, I suppose. Sorry, more of a body to body, but there is some sort of level there, and so you could actually say, right, I'm not too interested unless Bitcoin gets down to around about 68,500. Then I'm going to monitor because maybe there's an opportunity for an entry, or we lose it. That's probably where we are with that. 4 hour RSI is kind of neutral. It can go either way. The RSI, again, it's just been a natural range. We've been able to see the ups and the downs with that. And then from the hourly point of view, again, not too much there. We're obviously seeing these factors a little bit more towards 74 rather than just 72.5. But like this trend line is probably something I would have a look at. If you want to draw it from even the wicks to the bodies, I suppose, pretty good. I think it's a fairly good one just to have on your charts. An alert you can necessarily set drawn, but it can give you a level where you go, right, set my alerts on trading view at 68,500. To do that, remember you just hit the clock on the right corner, you add an alert, it's price crossing, and you just type it in 68,500. Only want to go once, create, and then look, that white line is showing that alert, and that will just, that'll ping me on my mobile and on the desktop. Price of the drop. So if you're interested in doing that, a couple of other honourable mentions. And I bring Pippin up maybe a cautionary tale because Pippin's down 4%. Now, it's a meme coin, and you would not be surprised that actually it's finally collapsed. But just bear in mind that 6 weeks ago, not even 6 weeks ago, the exact amount of days. Nowhere near. It's 4 weeks ago. 27 days ago, this hit its all-time high. 91 cents. We're now at 4 cents, but down as low as pretty much 4 flats. That is, in the space of 4 weeks, I think I worked out at 95% correction. A 95% correction in the space of 4 weeks. Okay? There were times I tried to long it, and I've done a couple of small time shorts over the past couple of days just to try and save face from my long attempt at 37. So the point I'm making is we are always, and I said this last week, we're always so happy and delighted when price moves up, and we find, especially when it moves up fast, brilliant, this is really great. And I think we just, as humans, we kind of just neglect, whatever term you want to use. These things can happen in reverse just as swiftly. This thing has lost 95% of its value in the last 4 weeks. In that month of March, that has happened. We've gone from all-time high to nearly all-time low. Now, I have no idea from a fundamental point of view if there has been a bug, if there's been a hack, whatever has caused this. I've never bothered to look into it. But as a principal point of view, just bear in mind, for those of you that are trading BitTensor, and I did see some people say they took part. Well done for doing that. This is a sharp, sustained move upwards. And just because it's gone up doesn't mean it can't come back down. BitTensor has done that in the past itself. These big move ups, they do end up losing themselves. Just bear it in mind. Let Pippin be your cautionary tale. Me be your cautionary tale of where price has gone. In terms, I mean, it's down 43%. In terms of the other ones that I follow, there's nothing for me necessarily really to report with it. And I'm not going to waste anybody's time with a dodgy microphone. But we go down to some of the other ones. You know, oil down now at 91, 126. I know it doesn't feel like it, but my local petrol station, I think it's at 1 diesel at the moment. Wild. The Dixie back in and around sort of that 100 level. Pretty robust at the moment, if I'm being honest. Change it. But yeah, Dixie's looking kind of looking robust there. I think we talk about the NAS. So I got an alert because my alert was sent for the breaking of the 24, which we did on Friday. We lost it, and then we climbed back up it before the close. But then on Monday, we actually opened down here. Was it 23,500 below the 800 EMA weekly time frame? We've not really been able to do much about it, and that's sort of not. For those of you that I think it was Friday we talked about this. We weren't on the call. Weeks we talked about non-directional volatility. The problem is, beforehand we were getting non-directional volatility, but at least we were sort of trending slightly upwards. That momentum's gone, and yes, we're still getting the volatility. It's weaker and weaker each time, and we're suddenly starting to see a big curve. And that's continuing to happen. And there is a worry for me. The markets are about to roll over. A lot of people are talking about that. And maybe we have quick and swift resolution to the Iranian and an opening of the Strait of Hormuz. There's some positivity that can be spun from that, and we see some sort of knee-jerk reaction to the north. Right now, there's so much of this is just tipping this way that even if we do get any moves to the north, we can move 1,000 points to get back to 50 EMA. 1,000 points is like a hell of a move, but actually we're still in that downward trajectory. So I think there's certainly some times and some reason to at least be cautious around the Nasdaq, and the S&P, and just the general stock markets. It was 63,000 we were looking at on this one. So the alert hasn't gone, but ultimately, as I drew on Friday, last Tuesday, whatever it was, we've done exactly the same. We are now below the 800 EMA as well. We are struggling to 200 EMA. We're struggling to get back up it, and this is actually a little bit more pronounced than the Nasdaq. But that curve that we talk about the Nasdaq, this one really happened now. Steep drop off, and yeah, we can expect volatility and some ups and downs on the way up. The reality is, we haven't really broken through this, and if things do go as badly as we think it may this week, next week, then investors are going to be concerned. They are going to flee to the safe havens. Okay, they're going to move to Dixie, potentially gold, although gold's been crapping the bed. Well, oil will probably be a good bet given what's going on at the moment. So I think this time it's certainly a wide picture of just being a little bit cautious of where that's going. I would just bear that one in mind. Some of the other ones, Circle was a bit wild yesterday. There I was sitting high and pretty, thinking, oh, that's quite nice, and then suddenly it lost 25% of its value. I don't know what happened there, but it was a bit overextended. So that's just something to bear in mind. Nvidia, yeah, it's not. Even some of these, we're getting a bit close at the moment, and everything just seems to be kind of stalling. I think that's the word we're using. stalling there. Tesla just sort of trending down. Microsoft falling pretty far. Actually, MicroStrategy rejecting the 50 EMA, not making much of a move, but it's got a bit of headway from that 113 level. Yeah, Astrid. I was actually on the Astrid Telegram. There is some whale that holds a lot that's just basically selling and clearing house, holding this volatility. For those of you that are looking to invest in it. I think that's kind of it. I think I probably pushed the boundaries of your patience given the microphone issues. I don't know what's going on because my mic is actually blue. It's live, but just when I was trying to connect it to my OBS, it just wasn't picking it up. And so I don't know. And so I had to do this little makeshift thing. I apologize for that. It's probably about the third time Mike's just caught me out. In terms of everything else and where we're going, obviously we've got the trading hub tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'm sure there'll be a lot of bot discussions and also sort of trading of the bots. My bot is causing me a few issues, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. So kind of just stopped it paper trading anyway. Whilst I try to sort those out, it'll be interesting to see where we get an update from Sam with that. I'm sure he'll go into Tau and subnets in a lot more detail for those of you that are involved with that. Just for the rest of you, I mean, whatever decision you are making in terms of how you're managing your portfolio, don't be afraid to constantly just interrogate that, make sure you're right, and whoever that person is that's feeling like a loser or they've called themselves that, then you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone with that. It genuinely happens to us all. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, you've just not been in the industry or not been trading long enough, because it will come and get you. So, these things do happen. Try and just evaluate from it. And what I'd say is, if you want to, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to have a one-to-one discussion with you and try to help you out. No call on Friday afternoon, but I'll be back to the usual on Tuesday of next week. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you all tomorrow at 1 p.m. I look forward to speaking to you all. Have a good evening, everyone. Cheers.